The Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to John chapter 17. After Jesus had spoken these words, he looked up to heaven and said, Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son so that the Son may glorify you, since you have given him authority over all people. So give eternal life to all whom you have given him. And this is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. I glorified you on earth by finishing the work that you gave me to do. So now, Father, glorify me in your own presence, with the glory that I had in your presence before the world existed. I have made your name known to those whom you gave me from the world. They were yours, and you gave them to me, and they have kept your word. Now they know everything you have given me is from you. For the words that you gave to me, I have given to them, and they have received them and known in truth that I came from you, and they have believed that you sent me. I am asking on their behalf. I'm not asking on behalf of the world, but on behalf of those whom you gave me, because they are yours. All mine are yours, and all yours are mine, and I have been glorified in them. And now I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you, Holy Father, to protect them in your name that you have given me, so that they may be one as we are one. This is the gospel of the Lord. The book of the Acts of the Apostles is traditionally regarded as a second volume from the same author as the Gospel of Luke. For Luke's audience, the New Testament transition from before the Ascension to after the Ascension comes in our reading from Acts. As they were watching, Jesus was lifted up, and a cloud took him out of their sight. While he was going, and they were gazing up towards heaven, suddenly two men in white robes stood by them. They said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking towards heaven? This Jesus, who has been taken up from you into heaven, will come in the same way that you saw him go. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 24, we hear this. He led them as far out as Bethany, and lifted up his hands, and he blessed them. While he was blessing them, he withdrew from them, and was carried up into heaven. And they worshipped him, and they returned to Jerusalem with great joy. And they were continually in the temple, blessing God. So here is the link between the two books of Luke, which completes the gospel narrative and leads us into the story of the early church. There's a similar link between the very exceptional account in Luke's gospel, which relies on the physical experience of the disciples, and John's more deeply theological version of the event in the words we heard this morning from chapter 17. What do we make of the apparent paradox as we recall at Ascension and at Jesus leaving the disciples after being raised? The paradox that neither Jesus nor God's presence has gone. Jesus' disciples, after their friend and teacher left them, found themselves in a frightening new place, feeling ill-equipped to cope. As a community, we must also cope in our worship in a new uncomfortable place, to sing our songs and pray our prayers, committing ourselves to seek and serve God. We feel Jesus' presence, knowing the experience of the disciples, God's powerful presence, perhaps even more powerfully than before. Jesus' ministry on earth had ended, the ministry of the church. As reported in John's Gospel, Jesus prayed for those who had been with him in his earthly journey. I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world. Holy Father, protect them in your name. Having been raised, Jesus could not remain. His task fulfilled, having opened the eternity to God's people, Jesus had to return to the eternity from which he had come. We must accept the task he has set us and grasp our earthly part of that eternity. And no matter how difficult, how contradictory, how impossible it may seem, we can do it. Jesus kept the promise of the Ascension, and we receive from the triune God in the Spirit the power to do our bit in the presence we now feel, not as it was in the upper room, the presence of God in the room with us, but now God's presence in the room that is us. In years past, I have reflected that all of this is foreign to the present age. Jesus' promise of divine spiritual assistance and inspiration to many people is not acceptable. In secular wisdom, the only reality is what we can see and measure. Wisdom claims that humans can do anything, solve any problem through their human abilities, knowledge and skill. It sometimes seems the most valued things today are to do with the economy, to the exclusion of all else, particularly the exclusion of a just and equitable society and the health and welfare of the people who make up that society. This, as I have said many times before, is just wrong. In the presence of Jesus, crucified, risen and ascended, this arrogance should never exist, and it has to stop. I think the evidence now stands as witness to the truth of my contention. An invisible, deadly virus, a collapsing natural environment, and the imbalance of wealth and resources throughout the world would surely suggest that the truth is somewhat different from the outdated wisdom of our world. Somehow, we need to bring ourselves and our world into something of the spiritual world of Jesus' disciples in the days following his crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension. Theirs was a fragile little community, anxious and bewildered, watching their Lord's departure but not distraught. When it was all over, there they were, worshipping with joy. Their advantage over us? They knew that they had no power of their own. Any power they would ever know would be given to them through the Spirit, even if they hadn't been told when or how. In the reading from Acts today, somebody asked a practical question. Are you going to restore the kingdom to Israel now? That's not a faith question. It's a political question. It's the wrong question, and it's a short-term question. Still, Jesus answered. God knows the answer, but you don't get to. Stop worrying about having things the way you want them to be and wait for something else. A power that is coming. Wait for it. What we await is not the solution to our problems and our challenges simply dropping from the sky. We await the collective wisdom of the human race understood in a new and different way. Wisdom inspired and enabled by our Creator God to see the big picture, not wisdom constricted by human arrogance and greed. We are surely called to trust to God's wisdom in the Spirit and to pray for the fullness of that wisdom to lead us to see the right, not necessarily the societally correct way to be God's people. Next week at Pentecost, we'll recall the disciples receiving the Spirit. Hopefully, we will find anew the confidence in God that the disciples were gifted for the first time on that day. Surely we can embrace this gift with confidence. God knows, we know that this age's misplaced confidence in itself is not getting the job done. May the ascension of Christ, to be God with us, Father and Spirit, remind us that we have the power from God to achieve the task that God sets us. That is the wonder. That is the paradox, the mystery of the Feast of the Ascension. May the ascended Lord be with you.